Good morning, Yorkshire Classic Cars Limited lovers, Capri lovers. Who doesn't love a Capri with a rover V8 in it? Well, some of you might not, but I do. Today I am going to fit this wastegate to the car here, where the collector hits the turbo. Okay, just under the turbo flange. I believe that's the right place to put it. I'm no expert on this stuff. Hopefully I'm going to learn as I go along. This is the wastegate I bought. This is some tube I've cut to mount between the exhaust and the wastegate. This ironically is out of the original exhaust I built for the car, well, many years ago, clearly before I could weld. So I'm going to cut that to length and get straight on it, less waffle. Right, this piece of pipe is some I cut from an old exhaust. Again, it's quite nice to upcycle stuff from the original car. This is the tube cutter I was talking about last time. It's like a pair of modified mole grips, and it has ring cutters in it. You put it round. Now, really difficult to use on the floor. These are really designed for when you can't get to angle grind something off in a car, and you put it round and work it, and it cuts through. Now, I used it to mark that end. Hope you can see that end, and it came out perfectly. And what I did was just make a line and then go around with the cutting disc. It came out perfect. This end, not quite so much. It ran off, and then when I cut it with the angle grinder, it's all gone a bit wiggly wobbly. Now, I'm not too concerned about that end. I've overcut it about ½ an inch because I've had to do a measurement with my fingers. I can't get a measuring device in there to put the wastegate in. What I'm going to do is, this is the V-band section that goes in the bottom of the gate. So the nice neat end, I'm now going to weld that through and show you how to do it nice and neat so it comes out looking significantly neater than usual. So I'm going to take a little longer to do that and show you how to do it. You can see I've cleaned the pipe. The pipe has been cleaned all the way up before I cut it. Makes life a lot easier. This end, if I need to weld up that gap when I've cut it there, I can do. I'll probably need to cut that off and trim it to shape anyway to fit on there. But yeah, that's quite a nice square end into there. And I'm going to weld that up there. So, before I crack on with the welding, you'll see that I've got my workmate out, the old trusty workmate knockoff. I've placed a piece of thick steel on top. This is going to be my welding bench for today. I kneel down on the floor. If you need something to kneel on, you know, stick something under there if you need. I don't, so I'm alright. I'll probably get housemaid's knee, but you know. Anywho, this is a thick piece of steel that I'm going to use as my earth. So I can then stand my piece of tube that I've put down somewhere on that this way. Now then, you may or may not want a tutorial on this, but I'm going to give you one anyway. Hopefully you're still watching. This works a lot easier than trying to clip the earth clamp to it. I can earth clamp to here. What I'm going to do here is clean this surface really clean. Give that a light dust over just to make sure it's making a really good earth on there, and then I'm going to stand that on there. I'm then going to try and weld round with the bulk of my heat going into the thick section, so the actual V-band here, and it will creep up that, and I will see the blob appear and creep up, and once it touches the pipe I stop. Okay, and then I move along about 1 millimetre, blob, up, stop, blob, up, stop. Like when you're tigging, if you're consistent with that, it will make a nice, neat finish. Now my gun is still absolutely ruined, but I'll try my best with it. The problem is you do get... Excuse my shaky wiggliness, but you can see there that I've just run the grinding disc. That was a ruined disc, quite honestly, just to take any rust or impurities off the top of the metal. And the earth is now clamped to that. That is actually doubling up as a clamp to clamp the piece of steel. Doesn't really need it, but that's fine. I've also cleaned here. Now, if I was TIG welding here, I'd want that a lot cleaner and I'd use a brand new disc. I wouldn't want any impurities in it whatsoever. It may not make a huge amount of difference, but the better the earth, the better the weld in my experience on anything you weld. That's the piece I'm obviously going to weld. I've cleaned the top surface here. This is already clean. I haven't run it over again because it is stainless, so it isn't too bad. I've cleaned the nozzle in my welder. As you can see, it's not great. I've had to give it a bend because it's absolutely ruined here. But to be honest, it'll weld this fine. I'm trying to talk into the camera because obviously the welder's quite loud. Bit of a nightmare to do this because every time I move, I hit the camera with the feed for the welder. You know, the handle wire, whatever you call it. I will say also that I try to keep that as straight as possible when you're welding. That keeps a neater weld because it stops the wire dragging. If the wire's trying to feed through and it has to go through a load of convoluted circles and it goes, your weld will reflect that. Okay, so hopefully you'll be able to see what I'm doing. Just going to stop you there. I'll clean that up and show you it. My mask, I've knocked the setting on my mask and it's too light now, it's too bright, so I need to adjust that. Just a sec. So hopefully you could see what I was doing there. You can see that now as sort of done a stack of quarters. The only problem there was I couldn't see. As I struck the arc, I sort of got blinded by the light, and although my eyes were protected, so I haven't got arc eye, I couldn't see what I was doing. And one critical thing when you're welding is you've got to see what you're doing. Don't just sort of get carried away. We all do it. I still do it occasionally. But you can't do it by guess. You need to read the weld as you're doing it. You need to see the heat spreading through your material, and you need to take your time. I've run the wire wheel over there because obviously that takes off the detritus. You can see the weld here. It's still red hot because I've literally just done it. But the weld here, it's run down a little bit too far, and that's because I couldn't see what I was doing. May need a slightly less wire feed on that as well, but I'll sort of jig that out as I go along. So I'll put this back on the bench and I'll weld some more up. So right, so I'll do this continuous so that you can see I haven't faffed with the weld. I'll zoom you out a little bit and show you that. Obviously this end of the pipe's going to get hot soon. It's reasonably hot now. I'll just get a pair of pliers, bear with. So hopefully you can see that has created that stack of quarters effect as I've gone round. Now, because you were watching me in real time, I kept turning this round and stopping so the heat was dying off. If I'd have been doing this without you watching on the camera, I would have just continued round that workpiece rather than stopping and moving the workpiece. I had to do that so you could see what I was doing, hopefully. I haven't seen the video yet. Where are you? There you are. There you should be able to see that now. That's quite a neat sort of stack of quarters appearance on that weld. Stack of quarters doesn't make it any stronger, but it does look prettier. Again, I could have taken longer over it. I only have one of these V-bands, so I can't really sort of mess it up. I've wire wheeled that off with the angle grinder. Quick word on wire wheels, just for my own peace of mind. You can tell I used to be a school teacher, can't you? Please, please, please be careful with them. Always wear goggles. They don't hurt if you stick one in your eye. Don't ask me how I know. And secondly, if you've got young kids like I have, and I did say I'd say hello to Emily and Charlotte. Hi, Emily. Hi, Charlotte. Then they stick in your clothes and trousers and you won't even know, and then they drop out. I walk in the house, I go and get changed, and well, I get undressed and get straight in the bath. Not that you need to know that, but the fact is, these wire wheel hairs fall over the place, and it doesn't bother me if I stand on one, but if your children get them, they are really sharp and really nasty. Anywho, on with the job, but I hope you think that looks all right. It looks a lot better when I take a little bit of time and set it up properly, but obviously, as I say, with my car, I don't get the time to spend on it. So I removed that piece, you saw there, speeded up no doubt. That's where I've marked. As you can see, it's a difficult area to mark. I'm hoping the gate is going to fit in thus. Sorry, promised I wouldn't say thus anymore. So what I'm going to do there is, I'll just grind off this part here, so as I can get my pilot drill in for my hole saw, and then I'm going to get a hole saw that's just slightly larger than that. Bob it through, bob it back on the car. I don't need to reassemble the turbo and everything. This will just reassemble back on the car. It's only these two V-bands. Also, while I was doing it, I noticed a pinhole in this, so I'm going to weld that up as well. Okie doke. All being well, you can see the hole I've created here. Took literally ages to drill that, not hours and hours. However, it did take a fair old while. Had to do like a minute, and then the drill would overheat, and then a minute, and the drill would overheat. It does not like stainless steel. However, the wastegate fits into that quite nicely. Don't want it too tight there, because obviously I've got to get fixtures and fittings in. So what I'm going to do is that's a little tap in, hopefully. Get the old rubber shillelagh there. Don't want to damage anything. Pushing that in there. Obviously the turbo and the downpipe is missing. The angle doesn't matter because I can rotate it on the V-band at the back there, so I kind of like it more that angle really, if I'm honest. So what I'm going to do now is draw that around that with the old Sharperoonie, and then I shall trim the pipe inside to fit. It is all the way in. Yeah, it's all the way in. Actually, it's not. It doesn't need a huge amount trimming off, feeling that inside. So I'll hunt out a Sharpie, I'll mark it, cut it, and then tack it in place. So, having created the world's most oddball fish mouth here, you can see the line there. I've tried to leave somewhere between a 16th and 1/8 of an inch on that, so it'll still push, hopefully, inside here. I made a rough mark to show where roughly again to line up. So I'm hoping, all being well, that'll push into there. I just need to give it a bash with the old cleaver again. So we're still attached to the tripod, so sorry about that. There's the weld. There were quite a few large gaps in there. I did a run in there, you can see underneath the top of that, and I've gone over the top of it just purely because it's an incredibly difficult area to weld. So I did 2 passes to make sure it doesn't leak. The rest of it's reasonably neat. To say it was such a gappy idea, it was gappier than I thought it was actually. I could run an angle grinder around that now and smooth it right out, you wouldn't even know it was there. You can see here where I smoothed out the previous weld to make sure the material was roughly the same thickness, so I didn't have to faff about with my settings. I did this on quite a low setting, and as you can see it doesn't flow out as nicely as it did previously on this weld. You need to keep the heat in it, but unfortunately when you're doing it across a gap like that, the heat is the last thing you need in there really, so you try to avoid that. Either way, it's a good solid fit, it's strong, it's secure, it isn't protruding inside, which is also important. I didn't want it protruding inside. There is a random wire in there that I will need to get rid of because I don't want it to blow through into the turbo from the exhaust system. I think I'm probably going much later in the day. There's the up pipe reconnected. The wastegate is fitted and tight. I've fish-mouthed and V-banded a piece of pipe there. It was the last section that I had left over from the Ford Capri exhaust. I've ground the weld back here, you'll see. Not for aesthetics. The weld was very messy. And I was worried that the V-band clamp, that these little wastegates come with these cheap cast iron type V-bands. I don't really like them. However, they're all I've got at the moment, and I'm not exactly sure what size they are, and short of ordering hundreds and hundreds of them until I get the right one. I'm going to use them. So I ground that back because it left a lot of spatter in here, so I just whipped the angle grinder over it just to tidy it up. I did the world's weirdest fish mouth on here. I'm hoping you can see it in there. It's actually a reasonable fit. Yet again, there will be gaps. It fits into the turbo back pipe, and it keeps everything nice and compact. Now, I don't know if that's the best place to tee it back in, so don't take my word for it. I'm assuming it is. I don't think scream pipes are legal, and seeing as this car's going to need an MOT, I figured I wouldn't put a screamer on it, as in an open pipe. Quick word about this wastegate. This is a Chinesium one that looks incredibly similar to a Tial one. Now, when I was first turboing, a chap who works in a place selling turbos and he has a really fast car, he knows what he's talking about, told me that the only thing I shouldn't scrimp on, he said he'd used Chinese turbos, he'd put Garrett bearings in them and stuff like that, excellent. So the only thing not to scrimp on is the wastegate because you may have problems with it. Now, I ordered this from the Bay of E, and I think it cost me 48 quid. A genuine Tial one is probably 400 or 500 quid, so I'm going to give this a blast. Worst case scenario is it melts my engine. It's only a standard engine on standard pistons that are probably worn out anyway, so, you know, it's not the end of the world. If I need to buy a Tial one, I will. But if I can save a little money, I do know people using some wastegates similar to this, and what he bought two off me actually. There's some that I bought a while ago. One of them worked perfectly, the other one didn't work at all. He's still using the original one that he always put on. I think they were 60mm gates, but this is a 44. So I'm going to give it a go. Worst case scenario is it doesn't work. I've literally no idea where I plumbed the pressure pipes, but I'll find out before I get there. I did used to know and I've forgotten, truth be told. So what I'm going to do is whip that downpipe off. I'm going to leave the wastegate in situ. It's really tight there now. So I'll whip this off the turbo and off the downpipe, and then I'll cut this hole and tap that in place, and then I can take that off and weld it. So there you go, gentlemen predominantly, occasionally a lady. I've welded that all the way round. It was really gappy and really nasty. So what I did was I bridged it all with a number 3 setting, so a low current. And then what I've done is I've gone over with a number 5 all the way around pretty much to try and make sure it's got a really good bond and a good fillet. Ironically, the worst part with the biggest hole was in there, and that welded beautifully on number 5, which is really bizarre. Completely contrary to what it should have done. However, it did it, and there we go. It's not for aesthetics, 1 iota. I could just run a flap disc over that now and it would look really presentable, but I'm not going to. It'll weaken it, and predominantly this is done for strength and function. However, there you go, one weird little pipe with some sort of weird growth coming off it. I shall stick that back on the car, do your little shot at the end there, and then that's all she wrote for today. There we go. After 15-20 minutes of trying to find the camera, God bless getting old, there we are, gated and wasted. The gate has plenty of room here. It can pivot down here above the rack. It's nowhere near actually, even if the rack arm comes completely up, it'll be fine. Piped back into the downpipe, away from the turbo and sort of flowing in that direction. I don't know if that makes a difference at all. I've heard that people say it needs to be, but I don't really, I can't see why it would, based on the physics of it all. But we're in. Obviously it's going to need airlines to the plenum for boost and things like that, or to the brass fitting there that you can just see on the back of the turbo on the cold side. But yeah, pretty damn pleased with that. The video camera now seems to be the new game in my workshop. It used to be Hunt the Sharpie. There must be 20 Sharpies in this workshop. Can't ever find one. So yeah, that's the next section done.